Hello everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Rover Product Enhancements v5.17, New Group Features, Add-on Advancements, and more, presented by StaynTouch Implementation Consultant, Tyrus McGlone. I'm Erin Fisher, the content writer here at StaynTouch. Today's presentation will cover how you can get the most out of Rover v5.17 product release. In this webinar, we will explore changes to guest card search, review the new group borrow from house functionality, identify filters added to group search, discover the addition of payment date on the group summary tab, demonstrate improvements to custom exports data spaces, explore additional delivery options added to scheduled reports and exports, identify the addition of the month-to-date label on the Rover Dashboard, and discover how to select a date range for add-ons. We will have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we will answer them in the order they are received at the end. And with that, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Tyrus.
All right, thank you, Erin, and good morning, everyone. As Erin mentioned, my name is Tyrus McGlone, and I will be going over some of the newest features on today's webinar. So over the past 3 weeks, we've come up with quite a few things to enhance the system. First, I am going to start off with the guest card search by leading characters. So many of you may know here on the dashboard, you'll have the search icon here. You can either search by name, group, name, room number, or confirmation number. And confirmation number could be internal or external. Many of you may just search by guest name. In the past, we've had the privilege of searching via guest name by only using 3 consecutive characters and not using a leading character of that guest name. So for an example, if my name is Raul and I wanted to just search for AUL, because AUL is a part of the name Raul, this will not populate. However, if I type in RAU, this will indeed populate because I'm now using a leading character. So again, the thing that we have modified is you can still use 3 consecutive characters. It will still populate. However, you must start off with the leading character of that guest name. All right, next I'm going to go into groups. I'm going to cover about 2 or 3 topics for groups today. First is going to be the group borrow from house functionality. So many of you have asked, if I don't have actual inventory inside of my group contractor dates, can I still make a reservation? We do have the option to actually borrow from house. So if I go here to my menu option, groups, and manage groups, you will see a few groups here in my property. I'll take, for example, the Howard wedding here in the middle of my screen. You'll see I have contracted dates from February 18th up to February 22nd. I have 1 definite room contracted, and out of that 1 definite, that 1 room has also picked up. So I'm going to go ahead and go into this group block. Again, the contracted dates here are the 18th to the 22nd. If I go to room block details, I'll see that again, I have nothing else picked up other than that 1 room. I do have contracted dates of the 19th, 20th, and 21st. However, again, I do not have any contracted rooms here blocked. But if I wanted to make a reservation, I can still do so. So let's pretend if I'm calling in and I wanted to make a reservation during this time, I'll go to the new option. I'll say February 18th. And let's just say for 2 nights. Now, to easily add a group to a reservation when you're making it, you'll see the company group TA option here, group allotment option. I'm going to just simply type in the name of the wedding or the block. So I'm going to say Howard, and I'm going to see Howard wedding populate here. And I'm going to go to find room and rates. Now you will see the custom group rate option come up. If I break this down, it will give you the room types that were contracted. However, at this point, it's showing that 0 are available. Again, I did not have any inventory inside of my group block when we actually contracted it. You'll also notice that these normal book buttons that are typically green when you have availability, they're currently red. So what does that mean? I can still actually click on this option here. So I'll click on book. I'm not going to do any add-ons at this time, so I'm going to proceed with book in the top right-hand portion. Now, this option will actually come up and ask me what I like to borrow from the house. If I want to pull inventory from the general inventory to add to this group, I can absolutely do so by just clicking borrow. And then I will proceed with filling out the guest profile. And I'll go ahead and save this, and I'll enter payment data here. All right, now the reservation has been created for 2 nights. Again, I am a part of the group now. If I were to go into my group and just look at that inventory here, you'll see that I have 3 now that were actually blocked, and all 3 room nights have also picked up. So again, this is going to be 3 room nights and not necessarily 3 reservations. And that's it for the actual pulling from house inventory. Next on the groups, we can stay on the screen here. We've added the ability to kind of filter by the hold status of that group. Hold status meaning whether the group is tentative, whether it's definite, whether it's canceled, or any other hold statuses that you guys may use in your property. So the hold status here, you'll see group status, and you'll basically just use this drop down arrow here to just sort it by anything that's not definite, or if you only want to see definite groups, you can actually sort this now. If you're curious about where these hold statuses are pulling from, you would simply go to the menu option of your hotel, settings, and you will go to the reservations tab on the left hand side, and hold status will be in the middle of the screen, closest to the far right hand portion. These are the hold statuses that are here and which will appear on the actual group filter drop down. All right, and last on the group portion of today's call, we also have a payment date that's been added to the group summary page. So again, I'm going to go back to the Howard Wedding group here. We have this payment date here, which is just under the release cutoff option. This payment date is not mandatory. It's just simply an option for you to post a date here. If your group, let's say if your group has a deposit date in which your deposit is due, this is just a date for your reminder to put here. This payment date information is not mandatory, nor is it seen by anyone else. Only people that have access to StaynTouch Rover, and more specifically, individuals that have access to groups. All right. So outside of groups, I want to go over custom exports. Of course, we're constantly doing data space improvements. So first, I want to go to the menu option, reports, schedule report export. And I'm going to go to custom exports here. So custom exports, again, we implemented this a few months back. So it allows you guys to kind of customize your own exports and kind of populate data in what you need and to weave out any data that you don't need. I'm going to go to new export here. First, I'm going to go to the financial transactions tab. And under the fields icon, or under the fields options here, we've added a few things. One specific thing that we've added is the AR invoice, which is now at the very bottom. So this is, again, a new data space that you can actually add to your custom export. Another export that we have made improvements to is the stay export. So if I go to the stay export, also under the fields, we have a new data space for rate code. So rate code, and we also have the company name and travel agency name. So these are three new data spaces that we've added to the actual custom export for stays. We also have the reservation custom export. Now, this is slightly different. We haven't added actual data spaces to the fields, but we've added different options. So if you see the add filter option on column number 3 here, if I add filter, I have the option of doing duration, which then gives me the option to basically select a created date. So when was this reservation and when was this group actually created? This is a new filter that we've added, as well as if I go back to the actual reservations tab and I can add a filter, we have options as well, and you can actually sort it by group name, and group name is here as well. So if you're searching for only groups for a custom export, you can also set up one and sort it by group name. All right. The next thing I would like to show everyone is more of the delivery option when it comes to custom exports. So if I were to choose, let's say, financial transactions here, at the far right-hand portion of my screen, let me just toggle over here. We've improved the delivery method. So many of you are probably used to a CSV format or maybe just a standard PDF format, but we also have the option now for Google Drive and Dropbox. So if you have these particular items configured, you can absolutely use them. I don't think I have Dropbox configured, but again, if you have these options, or these particular platforms, Google Drive or Dropbox, you can actually export them as that being the delivery method for your custom exports. All right, so that's it for the actual custom exports and schedule reports. However, one other thing I want to show you guys on today's call is going back to the dashboard, we actually have a month-to-date option. So if you scroll down underneath the guest field, you have occupancy. Many of you are probably familiar with, showing the occupancy for today, the day after, which is 31st tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, which is February 1st. Then you have your year and your month. You currently have your month to date. And now previously, you guys may be familiar with this just showing the entire month. So this would previously show you all of January. However, now we reflect just the month to date versus the entire month. So again, month to date is going to show you anything from the first day of the current month to the actual current date. So this is giving me everything from January 1st to January 30th, not including anything for January 31st. And last but not least on today's webinar, this is something that we discussed briefly last week. Sorry, not last week, on the last webinar's call. This is actually going to be the add-on option and how to actually put schedule live dates or active dates for that actual add-on. So if I go to the rates option in settings, I'm going to click on add-ons. Now, many of my add-ons here don't have active dates. This was actually a previous field called descriptions, but we've changed it to active dates. If I click on either of these add-ons here, I can actually schedule a from date and a to date. This is not mandatory. However, again, if you wanted to schedule a from date and a to date in which this add-on is active, you can actually schedule this. Obviously, if you schedule an end date, it will expire at some point. If you do not schedule a from and to date, it will remain active at all times. All right, at that point, I'm going to hand it back over to Erin for any questions.
Thank you, Tyrus, for that insightful presentation. I'd now like to turn over the floor for questions. Remember, you can submit questions through the question box in the middle of the control panel. So I'll give everyone a few seconds to enter those questions. All right, so the first question is, can you borrow from house on shoulder dates that are not listed in the groups from and to contracted dates?
Great question. So the answer to that is no. Right now, you can only borrow from house if you have contracted inventory. Contracted dates set up. You don't have to have inventory inside of those contracted dates, but you must have the dates applied to the actual group. So, for example, if I go here to the menu option in groups again, I'll go to manage groups. Again, one group that we previously worked on is the Howard wedding. You'll see that the contracted dates are the 18th to the 22nd. I'm going to go back to my dashboard. If I were just to say new, and let's just choose February 17th. I know that February 17th is not contracted. If I were to even type in Howard here, how it would not appear at any point for my group because the 17th is not contracted. So I would say be on the lookout for show the date, most show the date functionality in the near future. But right now you must have inventory inside of the actual group. So you must have the contracted dates inside of the group, not necessarily the inventory.
All right, and similarly, can anyone borrow from the house when entering reservations for groups? Or is this for managers only?
Great question as well. So based on the actual permissions, anyone could borrow from the house, but again, it's permission based. So if I go to the menu option, settings, and I'll go to hotel and staff and permissions. This item, I believe it's called, let's search, I believe it's called specifically group borrow house. So if you're a hotel admin, of course, you'll automatically have permissions to, achieve this. However, it is permission based.
All right, and then can the borrow from house functionality be turned on or off for a group?
No, it cannot. So if you have permission to actually do that, to borrow from house, it's just either on for any group or off for any group. Again, you can actually set it up. If I go back to my actual group option, if you're concerned about borrowing outside of those dates, I would just put a hard date, so you can't borrow outside of those actual dates. But it is permission based. So if you have, current dates, and maybe you don't have any more inventory in that group, but you have tons of inventory in the general inventory, you can still borrow from that. So I would recommend turning the permission off then if you don't want anyone to have access to that.
All right, and then if an add-on is expired, can we toggle it back on?
The answer to that is, well, that's a yes and no answer. If I go here to your rates and add-ons, so we have the option to, let's just say if one of these were actually inactive. If we had active dates here, I cannot toggle it back on, but I can actually click on the actual add-on itself and just extend that date, which will make the add-on active again.
All right, and I'll just give everyone a couple more seconds to enter those questions. All right, since there are no more questions, I would like to take to the floor to offer some final thoughts. All right. So in this webinar, we explored changes to guest card search, reviewed the new group borrow from house functionality, identified filters added to group search, discovered the addition of payment date on the group summary tab, demonstrated improvements to custom exports data spaces, explored additional delivery options added to scheduled reports and exports, identified the addition of the month-to-date label on the Rover Dashboard, and discovered how to select a date range for add-ons. With that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you all for coming, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at aaron.fisher@shijigroup.com. Thanks again.